So let's start with taste. The term for taste is gustation, and that's good to remember. And the organs, or the receptors, are taste buds that are located mostly on your tongue, but in some other places listed here as well. Taste buds are microscopic, so we're really going to have to zoom in, right, in order to see a taste bud, and we're going to do so on the next slide. A papilla is a tiny little bump, in this case on your tongue, and if we look at the papilla, we can see that there's a little pore or canal. We call that a taste pore, and then when dissolved chemicals flow into this taste pore, well, they encounter these tiny little taste buds that you see in blue, and we'll explain them and look a little bit closer at one little taste bud on the next slide. Now we're looking at one tiny little taste bud, which is made up of quite a few cells here. They say 50 to 100 cells. Most of these are gustatory cells or gustatory hair. Sometimes they're called the tips of those gustatory cells gustatory hair. Some cells at the base are just there for division. They're called basal cells that go through mitosis. But here's that taste pore that's not labeled, so the dissolved chemicals will come in contact with these gustatory hairs, which will then send an impulse, and try to think about where that impulse will go in your brain from a previous chapter. We'll go to the next slide to find out. So a lot of good information here from to bring back previous chapters. So we look at an area in your mouth. We see the tongue, the back of the tongue, the back of the throat, the epiglottis right here. And well, all your taste buds are located in those areas. But what's the nerve that is responsible for taste? Well, recall cranial nerves 7, 9, and 10. And when we go back to cranial nerves, we learn that cranial nerve 7, the facial nerve, is responsible for taste on the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Cranial nerve 9, glossopharyngeal, the posterior third of the tongue. Right back here. And then we learned that even vagus, cranial nerve 10, has some taste associated with as well, the back of the throat and epiglottis. So those are the 3 cranial nerves that will send that impulse. Now think back to chapter 13a. Well, what part of the brain is responsible for taste? And that's the insula. So the gustatory or taste cortex is in the insula, that deep lobe of the brain. Olfactory, which is your sense of smell, uses chemoreceptors, just like taste does. I didn't mention it then, but those are chemoreceptors as well. And your chemoreceptors are located in your nasal cavity. So as air enters your nasal cavity, well, these chemoreceptors for olfactory sense is sensitive to them. So then you have the action potential. So this would be cranial nerve 1, your olfactory nerve, which we call the olfactory bulb, but that is the nerve. And as we enter the CNS, well, we can't have a nerve anymore because it changes name to tract. So the olfactory bulb to the olfactory tract. Now think back, where is the olfactory sense perceived in the brain from previous chapter? The temporal lobe. So that will terminate, it's not showing it here, in the temporal lobe for perception. Remember, temporal lobe is olfactory and auditory.